Hello, everybody, and welcome to Let's Talk Mate, Solent Mind's men's mental health chat. And this month, I should say, we've got a very, very special Pride episode of the podcast. Before we get into it, I'd just like to say if anything we say during this podcast does affect you, please do reach out to our Solent Mind services. You've got a Solent Mind support line. We'll be able to let you know where anything is available in your area that is available for anyone in Hampshire or the Isle of Wight. Then if you're in Portsmouth, Fareham, Gosport, Havant or East Hampshire, you can contact the Harbour. That is open between 4:30pm and 11pm every single evening, and that is just a service that is there for anything from just a chat to really severe crisis service. And the same again over in Southampton, we've got the Lighthouse open the same times. All the links will be available at the end card and in our bio. So yes, if there's anything that does affect you over the course of this podcast, please do reach out to us. And also if there's any, there's also going to be a bunch of LGBT specific services in our bio as well. So please make sure you do reach out to them if you need to. So without further ado, I'll introduce myself. My name is Sam. I'm the Digital Content Officer for Solent Mind. And we'll just go around and introduce our guests. We've got 3 first-time guests on the show. So we'll start with Phil. We'll start with you.
Hi, my name's Phil. I'm a wellbeing advisor for Positive Minds in Portsmouth.
And Jo, let's go to you next.
Hi, I'm Jo. I'm a senior peer worker for Solent Mind.
And of course, finally, but certainly not least, I've got Maximilian. Please introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Maximilian, he, him, and I work at Beyond Reflections as the Member Experience Coordinator, which is a fun title, but you can call me Max for short.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for joining me. It'll be a really nice chat and something that we've been wanting to get more of it in Solent Mind for quite a long time, certainly ever since I've joined. And yeah, so this should be a really nice chat. So we're going into Pride Month, but I kind of want to start because I said to all of you before we start recording, this is quite a new conversation, quite a new topic to a lot of our audience. So I kind of want to start kind of talk about what is the kind of current state of play in terms of, which is a very weird way of putting it, but in terms of LGBTQ rights and kind of health in the UK and how that is affecting mental health. I don't know who wants to start with that. And it's a very broad question, but what's kind of first things that come to mind when you think about that, the kind of links between LGBTQ people and mental health?
I don't mind starting. A lot of the trans community are finding some of the pushback on trans rights recently really tough. At the moment, I'm doing all of the assessments for new members who are coming on board for some support with us. So that's people who are trans, non-binary, questioning, anywhere in that general scheme of things, but also like parents and partners and siblings of. And I know that the mental health stuff that's coming through now is more and more linked to, I don't think the government get it. I don't think that people generally get it. I don't think that people are seeing us as being ourselves. They're thinking it's more of a choice, and people are really often very disheartened, and to the point of, it was reach out for help or end my life. And I'm really saddened to see that, and I'm glad that we're here for people, but there's a lot of pushback against the trans community specifically. I'd like to see more allies step up.
I think as well, especially with the stuff that's come out with, with the conversion therapy and the ban on conversion therapy and not including trans people in that ban is a massive thing. And I was reading about it the other day, and it's that othering, isn't it? And it's that it's just another example of that kind of that separation. I'm really upset about it, and I'm sure a lot of people are, and that's not gonna help the situation.
Absolutely. And it also means that when people do have questions and they're not sure if they're trans or not, they're being pushed to not, rather than coming to somewhere like us where they can work out whether or not. We don't have an agenda of we're going to push you towards trans or away from trans. We're going to sit with you and help you work out where you are with that. And I think all of this stuff around conversion therapy, they're tying it to, all these people are detransitioning as much as anything else. Last stats I saw on that, it's less than 1% of people detransition. And yet that's where all the emphasis is being put. Can we look at the other 99+% of people who just
Mhm.
need that support to be themselves. I think people see it as too much of a choice.
I think there's certain newspapers who shall remain nameless that seem to jump on these stories and promote them as, the fact rather than the rule rather than the exception. And that is, unfortunately, the Middle England kind of, I don't know, view on things, and they're not receiving their news from anywhere else. And that's sad. It's not balanced.
And you know what? I would charge any of those people who believe what those papers say about how everyone's detransitioning. I would charge them to come and spend a day working with me and seeing the actual impact that that's having on people who are genuinely in this space where it's a case of, well, I can try and please my family and be miserable forever, or I can try and be myself and potentially lose my family. I mean, these are the decisions that people are making in order to just get through life and be themselves. It's horrible in a lot of cases. Not everyone. Some people have some really positive experiences. But for those people whose parents are those particular readers of certain papers and so forth, it's really disheartening to see it. And you see them go through all sorts of feelings and mental health struggles just trying to deal with the fact that they might lose their family by being themselves or vice versa.
Yeah,
Something that I think is a really dangerous viewpoint as well is trying to explain to people that people in this community are more likely to experience a mental health problem. It's almost, that's kind of taken as a, well, that can be taken very negatively, of like, oh, well, of course, because all of these things are related to mental health problems, in a really negative kind of view. And you're trying to kind of explain that the reason for this is because of stigma, it's because of bullying, it's because of, because of all of these circumstances. But a lot of people who kind of choose that line of thought and maybe, will kind of take that the wrong way and go, well, yeah, of course.
Yeah, they're all crazy, right?
Yeah, like, of course.
Absolutely. But it's not that. What it is.
No, and trying to explain
people,
that is
absolutely. The people who come through who just want a little bit of support while they're transitioning, but actually have acceptance from their family, some of the most well-adjusted people I've met.
Yeah.
Seriously, the people who are doing badly with their mental health are the ones who feel rejected and who feel that people don't get it.
Yeah, I think for me, like, I'm kind of going through a stage of gender questioning and whatever else. But the fact that I do know that if, whatever way my head goes with this, whatever way I kind of end up landing, the majority of my family will be totally fine. They've already shown a significant amount of acceptance. Just like, again, that is such a relief off my shoulders, which I know not a lot of people have, and it allows me to actually explore. People want to talk about, oh, you're getting pushed one way or pushed another. Like, the idea of not being accepted is the main thing pushing someone one way, and it's not the way that people seem to think that they're being pushed. That I feel, I've got a freedom of that. I generally feel like I can just land wherever I want. And I think this is an also important thing to say, is you're allowed to question your gender and still come out the other side going, I'm cisgender, I'm, whatever you end up being, is perfectly fine to sit
It's
down.
just as important.
That. Yeah, and I think that with sexuality as well, I think it's perfectly fine to go, oh, maybe I am gay, maybe I'm bisexual, maybe I'm this. Oh no, I'm not. Never mind. And that's not going through a phase. That's not, it's like, especially like being bisexual, you get the whole thing of like, you'll end up here and you'll be this, or like, I've currently got a girlfriend, so you're straight now. It's like, no, that's not how that works. But also just, even if people do get married and then go, oh no, I think, I'm happy just saying I'm straight, that doesn't mean they've gone through a phase. It just means they don't feel that represents them anymore. Like, there's no, just the whole point is, let this be fluid. Like, let us and our experience be fluid. That whole point of putting someone in a box and keeping them there completely defeats the object.
It should be joyous as well. Unfortunately, there's so much stigma with society and the layers that you have to go through. You've got families, you've got friends, culture, your background, where you live. There's so many different layers that you have to think about it. People don't do this for fun. They don't do it because it's just a jolly day out at the beach. It's because it's something they need to do.
Yeah, and I do think, like, and again, I've spoken to a lot of like people like, oh, they're forcing us down this route. It's like, if it was just purely on like what we're choosing, a lot of us probably wouldn't choose this, because it is such like it does cause so much pain. Like, if it was just a choice, like, it's not as simple as that. And I'm glad that, you know, I've been able to find my place, at least with my sexuality and being comfortable in my gender questioning. But that's not, and I'm very happy in that position now. But if you went back to me as a teenager and said, okay, you have a choice, I don't think I would have chosen to be that, because it is so hard, especially when you're growing up. And I think one of the questions we'll get onto later is all about representation, but when you're growing up in an area where you don't see yourself represented at all, it can be so tough. And we spoke on last month's episode was on social media, and I spoke a lot about how social media more or less saved my life, because I could see people that were like me, and I could talk to people that were like me that weren't in my local area, and just that how important that was for me to have that. And I know obviously beyond reflection, just you're giving that to people as well in a more local setting. But it can be so important to be able to reach out further in your local area.
Sorry.
No, go ahead, Phil.
I'm a little bit older, so I'm in my 50s. So I'm from the generation that was like, we didn't have social media, we didn't have representation. There was the first ever gay kiss on EastEnders, was like, you know, all over the place, was being scandalous. And there were no role models to reach out to. There was no one to look out to. We had Danny LaRue. You know, that was it. And I think I am pleased with the progress that has been made for people today, but enough progress still hasn't been made. But God, you know, how much easier would have been my life been if I'd been born 20 years later? It still wouldn't have been easy, but easier, I think.
Yeah, and I think it's also worth noting that I think at a certain point, and Max touched on it there as well, as there is this almost pushback that's going on at the moment, where like it almost felt like people, I don't know, maybe again, I've only like in the last couple of years joined this kind of more activism side of things, so maybe it's just like it wasn't involved in that side of things, I didn't see it, but it did feel like people kind of happy with like, okay, you can have like the rights we've given you now, and that you just be happy with that. And now we're pushing for a little bit more, and we're pushing for a little bit more equality, is now when we're getting a stronger pushback. And I feel like this happened in a lot of equalities. Like if you look at the Black Lives Matter movement, for example, it did feel like a very similar thing where like, you've got your rights, be happy with that, go sit in your little corner and be happy with the rights we've given you. Oh, you want more? Okay, now you go away. And I feel
be equal. How dare you?
Yeah. Like equality, we brought you up to like a few levels below us. Like, isn't that?
We gave you the token stuff, right? I remember sitting watching the news when civil partnership rather came in, and I remember feeling really angry. It's like, you're fobbing us off, and all of these people who think that that's enough and that's okay are celebrating this as a win. No, it's a bloody fob off. They're giving us something that's lesser than. And they're saying, oh yeah, you can basically get married, so that's marriage, right? I remember actual marriage coming in, and it's like, right, now we're doing it. We held off because there was no way I was going to put up with this civil partnership. Like, you are the lesser than.
Yeah, and
no way.
Yeah, and I think it is that whole thing that it does. People seem to hit too easy on these kind of certain things, like when civil partnership, even when gay marriage was legalized, it was almost like so many people almost had that, oh yeah, we're done. Job done, sorted. Okay, the homophobia has been fixed, and even to a point, like a lot of my work is in football, and obviously we had the massive news of Jake coming out in the last couple of weeks. But again, we've had the same thing where we're like, oh, there we go, homophobia in football is solved. Like, it's not as simple as that, and we'll see it. And I hope I'm wrong, but I'm willing to bet we'll see it next season that it's really not solved the problem, because I've had it in the last, literally, I don't think there's been a week in the last season where there wasn't some kind of homophobic incident of football somewhere in the country. Like, every single week it happens, like several times. And even just from the fact of me being an activist on Twitter for football, I just get it constantly, because as soon as I tweet about anything to do with equality and diversity in football, I'm getting several people going, "Oh, just shut up and let it be football," and that's the nicer ones of the ones that I get. So it's just, people focus too much on landmarks. Is that, maybe that's the right way of putting it?
Yeah, I got quite annoyed about how many people were not celebrating it, because yeah, it's a fantastic thing that it's happened, but it shouldn't have to be like that. There shouldn't have had to be all these people making, and a lot of people jumping on the bandwagon and getting their own slice of 5 minutes of fame because of their opinion on it. It shouldn't be like that. That should not have had to happen. That should still not have to happen. And it really, it pissed me off a little bit, to be honest.
Should have been a non-event.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely.
The minute that someone can stand up and say, I'm gay or I'm trans or I'm whatever, and everyone kind of goes, all right then, and it's not a big news event, that's when you know that it's closer to normal. Yeah, and the minute that no one has to say it in the first place, that's when we know we've got equality.
Yeah, and I'm really like, that's one thing that I'm just really excited about, the idea that people can just bring a boyfriend home, a girlfriend home. They can just come, they can just go out wearing a dress, wearing this, wearing that, whatever you know, whatever your expression is to you, you can just do it and not have any questions about it whatsoever. Like, not have any second guesses, not like, because even for me, as I said, come from a really accepting family, I still felt like I had to come out just in case, because you hear so many stories about people who think they've got an accepting family, then they come out and it's not the case. So as much as like I was like, okay, yeah, my family probably will be, I still felt like I had to come out, like, but what if they're not? But what if I bring home a boyfriend home and it all kicks off? Like, so, and you shouldn't have to worry about that. You shouldn't have to. And obviously I've got even more conscious of it now with my niece, is coming up on 2 years old, and just being like, I really hope by the time she gets to the age where she's thinking about that kind of stuff, that at the very least she can just decide for what she wants. But again, it's really sad when I'm thinking about that, and that's what going to be 10 years off maybe before that even comes into her mind frame, and I still don't think we're going to be close enough to that point, which is a really sad state of affairs to be in, to be honest.
Yeah. Speaking of someone my age, I'm really, that sounds awful, but I'm really proud of younger people for pushing boundaries the way they do. And every time I see someone doing that, it gives me a bit of a smile. I mean, you know, it's not always my bag. I'm a bit old and conservative, I suppose, these days. But when I see younger people pushing those boundaries, it just makes me smile. I just think, good on you. You know, you're being your authentic self and getting on doing what you want to do. And I just think it's wonderful. I think it's absolutely wonderful. And I hope it just keeps continuing and continuing and continuing.
Yeah, me too. I think that's where you can see some of the progress, isn't it? Like when a couple of years ago, I facilitated some groups for Breakout Youth in Southampton, and these, you know, these young kind of kids and young teens kind of coming in and being so like just so confident with it, and being, you know, and you know, and not everyone, obviously everyone, you know, there were some struggles and things, but a lot of them very kind of like presenting how they wanted to present and talking about what they wanted to talk about and things like that. And I was kind of overwhelmed at how, you know, how young and how brave and how just, you know, how sure of themselves they were. And it was just really lovely to see, because that just, you know, and I'm only 31. And, you know, when I was in secondary school and things like that, still even then, just not really spoken about, not really embraced, not really. And for me, realizing that I was queer was a really difficult time for me. And I was very isolated and very alone. And it's nice to kind of, you know, I know we're not there yet, but there are those glimmers of when you see those younger people, you think, okay,
there's
you know,
hope.
I'm glad. Yeah, I'm glad that, you know, you know, are feeling more able to do that. Like, that's so positive.
Yeah, the fact that it's no longer easier to present with something like an eating disorder than it is with just being queer and not being able to handle it is huge. I mean, I don't get many people now who come through. I do get some, but generally speaking, the younger people, when they first contact us and say, actually, I need a bit of support, I don't get many who are saying, I don't want to be this, I'm scared. I get more people who are like, I don't know how to do this. And that seems like a subtle difference, but it's absolutely the world difference between, I don't want to be this is scary, this is not okay, and I know this is going to be a little bit scary and I don't know how to do it. The difference being in the fact that they're accepting that it's okay to be themselves. They're just not quite sure where they're at with it, where they go from here.
That difference between maybe fear and apprehension to shame.
Yeah,
like the difference in that and the way that affects our bodies and the way that affects our mind and our health is so vastly different, because fear and things is something that we sort of, we sort of find a little bit easier to sort of maybe handle. Like shame is very, very difficult to process.
And also the expectation. There's an expectation that some people won't accept me, but I'll be okay. Yeah. Whereas before, and certainly with some of the older people that are still coming through our services, the eldest person that I've signed up over the past sort of 6 months or so was in her 90s. But some of the older ones are still coming with more of this, whereas the younger generation aren't. Around this whole accepting that I can be me, and there are people that will make it okay, rather than amazing. It's always going to be bad. And some of the older ones are still coming with a little bit of that attitude of it's always going to be bad. I'm always going to be, so words people use like a weirdo or a freak and things like that, and really using that to self-stigmatize. But then with the younger generation especially, but with quite a few people across the board, there's that expectation that actually I'm okay. I will get there. Other people around me may or may not get there. And we do offer the support for the friends and family as well. And I think that's really important as well, because they need to be where they're at as well. But there's a general expectation of it's going to be okay in the end. Whereas before, even 2-3 years ago, the expectation was, oh my God, it's awful. Everything's going to be awful forever. Whereas now we're getting people coming up who they're kind of the 18 to 20-year-olds especially. There's kind of, it's going to be fine because I'm this thing and I'm going to be this thing and the world is going to see I'm happier and therefore everyone's going to accept me, rather than they're never going to accept me.
I think
that's amazing.
No, it is really nice to hear, because even like I'm coming up on 24, and even like when, as you say, 5 or 6 years ago, that wasn't the case for me, and it's been like, really driven home a little bit by the fact I went to an all-boys school as well, which is a whole other subject that I'll get into at some point, I'm sure. But I didn't see that. And again, like, coming back to, depending on how you identify, depending on how you might think, like being bisexual, I kind of always hoped, as long as I kind of fall in love with a girl and get a girlfriend, no, I don't have to ever say it. Like, it's fine. Like, it's whatever. It doesn't have to be a thing. Whereas now, like, I've only ever had, in terms of serious relationships, girlfriends, but I still feel so much better for being myself, even if it's not, at a certain point, I was like, if I don't have to come out, I won't. Whereas now I've done it just because it feels so much better and feels so much nicer to just be myself. And also just like, and I also kind of thought about the idea of like, how many bisexual people did I see in my area in Southeast London that I didn't think that they were because of whatever else. So I kind of thought, well, I'm just going to, like, now at this point, it's like 80% of my personality, so you can't miss it, isn't it? Like, I'm pretty open about it, and that fills me with a lot of joy as well, because, I'm sure a lot of people might see me going down the street holding hands with my girlfriend and think, oh, it's a straight couple. But because of the way I try to carry myself and present myself, at the very least on my social media platforms, I make it very apparent who I am, and hopefully that brings a few more people to go, oh no, you can do all of that. And it was like the whole conversation of, for bisexual men, it tends to be, oh, they're just gay and haven't come out yet. For bisexual women, it tends to be they're straight and just seeking attention or whatever. It's like, and it all comes back to misogyny, obviously, because obviously men are just irresistible, and you just can't, like, there's no way you could possibly resist. But it is just such a disheartening thing to just be like, why? Like, I just want it's its own thing. Let it be its own thing.
Yeah. Why is it that your identity and your sexuality has to be confirmed by the person that you are with, like visually? So why is it can we not just go, I identify as bisexual? I don't personally, but I'm just using it as an example. I identify as bisexual, regardless of, this is my partner who identifies as this and this and this. Why is it like this kind of, like this proof, or this confirmation of, of who you are? Like, it's bizarre. It's really bizarre.
Yeah.
Can I add into that one of the things that comes up with, so we do partner support as well, and one of the things that comes up with the partner support is you've got couples who are either a queer presenting couple or a straight presenting couple, regardless of how they actually identified. But let's say that the partner who has latterly come out as trans and is now transitioning, they have their identity, their stuff going on. But the partner that's not transitioning, the usually cisgender partner, their sexuality as it is perceived by others has now switched.
Right.
So you've then got someone who is saying, here is my ostensibly wife, but we're going to have to move to using the word husband at some point. Does that make me gay or does that make me straight, whatever that is, or vice versa?
Mm.
Why do I have to change my sexuality label, assuming that they're not bi or pan? But if as a gay person or as a straight person, my partner transitions and we choose to work through it and stay together, not every couple does, but a lot do, why does my label have to change with that? Maybe actually I still identify as straight or I still identify as gay, even though my partner is transitioning or has transitioned. So you've then also got that extra thing of those labels being sort of externally put on people from a completely different point of view as well. So to add on to what you're saying about people who are bi or pan who are then being lumped in with gay or with straight because of how that one relationship presents, you've also got the people who don't identify with how their relationship presents at all because they identify as either gay or straight, who are then on top of that having that pressure to completely re-identify their own sexuality, even though that's not what they want to do, that's not where they've ever been. And then one thing I've noticed that's really been missing thus far from this conversation, we've obviously got kind of gay, bi, trans covered. What about our ace and arrow people? We haven't brought them in at all. And I thought about it as I was speaking. It's like, hang on a minute, no one's even mentioned ace and arrow. So I just wanted to kind of bring that in to a bit of awareness.
Yeah, no, 100%. And asexual and aromantic is definitely something that I've learned a little bit more. Like, it's something that I was really uneducated on up until kind of the last year, and it's something that having in my work with the Football vs Homophobia youth panel, we've got a couple of ACE members, and in talking to them, I've learned a lot more, and then in doing my own research, I've learned a lot more. And really, the pressures that come with that, which I really don't think talked about, is that there's so much. And again, there's another problem we talk about with sexuality being defined by relationships, the problems that can then come in with those communities where their relationships are being defined by, like, you know, and obviously they will often have relationships, whether it's someone who's asexual who will have a relationship, and there's so many other different points in that. But so much of it is defined by that, as I said, like, even I was guilty of it a little bit ago, of being saying, oh, you know, the representation of having a couple holding hands down the street. You know, there's so much of the tradition, like, I don't know how to word this exactly, but there's a lot of pressure put on the kind of relationship side of things, which then leaves them out in a lot of ways, which is just such, again, and just in TV shows in general, or like culture in general, it's all about finding that one, or it's all about having that extreme, like that moment where you have like your sexual awakening or whatever it might be. But again, leaving asexual and aromantic people behind.
Absolutely. And also, if you're talking about the one, all the people who have healthy polyamory relationships, as soon as you get into poly relationships, you blow a lot of people's brains, but they can be just as healthy if done right with the correct conversations around boundaries and where everything sits. But yeah, funnily enough, you're saying about not really knowing too much about ace and arrow stuff. I had some understanding, but not a huge amount. And so I do a regular blog for work. And one of my blogs a little while back on teaching people how to learn to be a better ally, I used my lack of knowledge around ace and arrow identities, and I used that blog to be like, okay, this is how I'm looking it up. This is how I educate myself, rather than just going and finding the one ace or arrow person I know and asking them a load of questions. Because actually, a lot of people don't know stuff about a whole load of the stuff that we're going to be talking about today and that we have talked about today. And I think modeling that, actually, I don't always know the answers, and here's how I would look for things, is really important as well.
Yeah,
for allyship, if
definitely.
nothing else.
Definitely. And I think what you're saying about approaching that one person in your life that you may know, I think a conversation with them can be useful. However, I wouldn't want to be the person, if someone came to me and said, what's it like for queer people here, and and asked me all these questions, I don't want to be the sole representative of that entire community of people. Like, yes, I identify as this and this, and I can give you my experience and my perspective on certain things, but I can't answer all the questions of what it's like to be a gay non-binary person. Like, I can't give you that. You need to go and have that research, as you say.
Absolutely. And on top of that, it's a lot. Sorry.
So I think people don't understand there is so much diversity within the community, as well as, and being defined by those boundaries is just impossible. It's impossible. It's stupid to even try.
Yeah, people need to find the labels that work for them. What I was going to say is, on top of that, it's a lot of extra emotional labor. And if you've got someone who's already feeling unaccepted and is experiencing all this mental health stuff and hasn't got the backup and the support, maybe they've found somewhere like us and they're starting to get that support, but you don't know they're in the right space to answer that. So sometimes the better questions to ask are, first off, are you happy with me asking you a couple of questions? Do you have the mental space for this? And secondly, is there a particular resource that you would recommend? So maybe you'd send them to our website. Maybe you'd send them to somewhere that has those mental health resources, somewhere that you trust for LGBT plus information, whatever it is, whatever organizations you can send them to, whatever websites that you found have good information on what they're looking for, can be much better for that person who's receiving those questions and not wanting to do that emotional work than just answering the questions because someone's asked. There's no need. You don't owe that person anything. No. You don't have to people please. If someone asks you a question about your identity or about the group of identities that you belong to, because let's face it, even if someone says, oh, you identify as queer, what does that mean? I can say, well, to me, it means this, like Joe was saying a moment ago. But actually, there's a whole wider load of stuff. So I can say, actually, it's kind of umbrella-y for all of this stuff. And for me, it's around, I don't want to put a particular other label on it. I quite like queer because it's a bit wibbly-wobbly and around the edges. But hey, here's some other information you can find. Here's where I would point you towards for further information about this thing, that thing, and the other thing. I don't have to say something. If Phil walked up to me in the street and went, oh, what's your identification? Like, what do you identify as? And what does that mean? I could say, well, hello, strange person. Here's where all that information is. Or, hello, Uncle Phil, here's the information that I'd send you to.
And I think, and in general, like the kind of asking if someone's okay to take this on board at the moment is something we should be doing from that as a mental health practice anyway. Yes. Like I do it with my friends all the time. If I feel like I need to have a rant or I need to talk about something that's like really irritated me, I'm like, before I get into, are you all right to take on like a little bit of, take on a little bit of my luggage? Have you got spare hands at the moment, kind of thing? Like, are you feeling all right? And having that relationship with my friends allows me, and I don't get offended if they go, actually, I've got a little bit much on at the moment. Do you mind if we just not right now, kind of thing? And that's a totally acceptable answer, because the last thing I want to do is come blaring into someone else's life with all this baggage that I just throw on top of them, and then they go, I've already got my hands full. So just that question should be just normal practice for pretty much the start of any heavy conversation. And
let's normalize checking in.
Yeah, exactly that.
How are you? Do you have the bandwidth for this right now?
Yeah.
Do you have a full battery? Do you have enough spoons? Whatever terminology and language you want to use around that with your friendship group, just normalize checking in with them.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah, and I think just kind of move on a little bit is to talk about how have we found accessing mental health services as LGBTQ people? How, I know for me personally, there's always just a certain amount of anxiety when I'm not going to a specifically LGBTQ space. This isn't just mental health services anyway. This is just a general rule for everything. This is when I'm going to uni. This is when I'm starting new work. This is, when I'm going to a new pub for the first time. Like literally anything it could be. But obviously, it then comes into mental health services. What are the views of this person going to be? What every new therapist, I'm pretty much thinking, what if I say this and they're they take it in this direction? Like they take it, as we said right at the start, we take it in that, you know, this is the reason, like rather than the effects around you being why you're mentally ill or health effects, this is the mental health essentially. And I think that is always an anxiety whenever I go to anywhere that's not LGBTQ specific. And I can only imagine for trans non-binary people, even for some LGBTQ specific places, there would be a slight worry that then they're not necessarily as supportive of trans. Like
absolutely, the T gets dropped more often than we want to admit as a society, than we want to admit. It's something that, so when you were talking a minute ago, the first thing that popped into my mind, especially when you said about therapy, was cultural competency. Because if you have someone who doesn't understand that, you're using that time, whether that's you're going to a free service and you've got only 6 sessions or only 12 sessions, you're using up some of that time educating your counsellor, educating the person who's supporting you in how your life is, in a way that other people don't have to. You don't have to explain what being straight is in terms of having an impact on your life before you can get into counselling. And funnily enough, my other job, I work as a counsellor in private practice, and one of the main things that I have coming through my doors is people going, oh, you're openly queer, so I know that I won't have to explain X, Y, Z. Or I did a quick search and I saw that you work at Beyond Reflections as well, so I can talk to you about all this stuff knowing that you won't automatically tell me it's because I'm trans. We have the same thing around doctors and healthcare. The amount of our members that I support with writing letters to their GP, I am so sick to death with writing them. And that doesn't mean if you need a letter and you're one of our members, don't come to me. I'm always, I want to really reiterate this, 100% happy to help people with stuff. But I'm so sick to death of the fact that the GPs need these letters in the first place. Because if I'm helping, if I'm helping someone write a letter to say, actually, the reason this is going on is this, you just need to do this referral. Can you stop being a so-and-so about it? Obviously, I don't put that in the letter, but I'm thinking, if you are a GP, please come and get some of our training services before doing anything on your own, or just give us a call if you're struggling with a particular patient and you just need some advice. Because I'm so sick to death of having to support people who've gone to their GP 5, 10, 15 times, and the GP is still making everything about gender when it's nothing to do with it, or completely refusing to take gender into account when, so for example, people just asking for a referral to the gender identity clinic. It should be as simple as, and if you're GP and you're listening out there, it's as simple as send off the referral when someone says they think they might be trans. That referral can always be not acted upon at a later date if that person then works out that actually, no, it's not a thing for them.
No.
But you're looking at 5+ years for a waiting list. So if
It's
your
not the
doctor is going to
GP's
delay
role
that,
to make that.
exactly, but we've got the amount of GPs that will send people, they'll send young people to CAMS, they'll send people to other various mental health places, they'll send them for a psych evaluation instead of putting them on the gender clinic waiting list. The gender clinic waiting list should be the first thing that you do as a GP. Someone comes in and they say, I am trans. Okay, have you been referred to the gender clinic? Yes, no. If it's a no, do you want me to? You as the GP should be taking that on board, because at the moment I have trans people who are ringing me up and going, oh, my GP says I need to talk to you first. You don't need to talk to us first. By all means, yes, come and get some support from us whilst you're waiting. By all means, come to us for support whilst you're on the waiting list or before you've managed to see your GP. Great. But if your GP is saying, no, go and get some support first, GP, do referral now. Done.
Yeah. I think it's just,
Sorry, I went on a bit of a rant there.
Yeah, no, it's great. and I think it is that thing of like, but a lot, and the idea is like referring them to a mental health service, which again might not actually have the capabilities to take actually take this referral. They might
and
not
also delays people by another year. If you've been delayed by another year and then you're looking at 6+ years on a waiting list instead of 5 is bad enough. And this is before people get hormones. I don't think people realize that it's 10 to 12 years for someone to go through a full medical transition in this country by design. This is how the NHS is set up to do it, purely because of that waiting list. If we got that waiting list down to a year or 2, you would be slashing that time pretty much in half.
And it's worth noting that in some cases it's life or death, that extra year.
Absolutely. Especially for people who can't pay for the hormones. So one of the things that we do in training when we're training people at what the trans experience can be for people, is we get them to work through with us, with myself or one of the other trainers, a timeline of how long things take. And I ask them to give the date in which someone started hormones and the date at which they finished in terms of all the surgery, assuming that they're going through a full medical transition, which not everyone does. But we work it through for people who are going through that full transition with all of the possible surgeries. And the difference between people who go privately for hormones and people who have to wait for the NHS is about 5 years. And the difference in mental health for people, for most people who choose to go the hormone route or who need to go the hormone route, the difference in mental health can, for some of them, be a life or death situation. Just on the hormones front of things before you get to everything else. So all these people, if anyone ever says to you, whether you're one of these people in the room or one of the people who listens to this later, if anyone ever says to you, oh, it's because we're putting people through too quickly, no, even going private, people are waiting a year. If you don't know within a year or two and you're still questioning, you don't get put on hormones. You get encouraged to work that stuff out. No one is getting put through it too quickly. Most people are waiting 5 years before the initial appointment, before the up to a year later appointment where they might get told that they can start hormones, at which point a letter goes back to their GP and their GP has to action it. Think about all the delays in that. This is why there are mental health crises happening with the trans community.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's a real lack of understanding around the reality of what access to treatment is like for trans people. There's a lot of anti-trans kind of narrative around, oh, it's a flippant choice, it's a flippant decision, it's this, it's that, it's and the reality of that, if someone was to sit down, as you say, and to go through that timeline, that's not a timeline someone makes a flippant choice about.
No.
Or during.
That's it. Well, yeah, exactly. That's not that's
before. Like most of the time it's not they, even like before they've made the decision to reach out for the first time. 9 times out of 10, that's a few years.
Yeah,
most people are ready at that point.
Yeah,
most people
that's
are ready.
A really
then.
good point.
Yeah, like I can't. Like, and again, like, I'm sure there is some examples of people that the first time they start to question, they just reach out. But I can't imagine there's a lot of that. Like,
you get a few, but not very many.
Yeah,
and when you do, it's because they are at a place where they're feeling like they're accepted in their questioning, and that they have somewhere to go. So, like, I do the occasional assessment with someone who's literally saying, "I haven't told anyone yet. I'm still questioning. I'm not 100% sure." They're the ones who have not gone to their GP usually. We get quite a few people who come through saying, "I'm not sure yet." We get maybe 1 in 100 of those who actually have already gone to the GP for some kind of referral. It doesn't happen very often.
I think that exactly shows just and again, like talking about the access to mental health services, that exactly shows that people would much rather go to a place where they know that this is, I'm going to be talking to someone who A, I don't have to educate, B, won't question it, C, there's no there is still anxieties, don't get me wrong, but there's a significant lower amount of anxieties, and you shouldn't have to be anxious to go to the doctor. Like that just shouldn't, other than the normal anxieties of going to a doctor, of course, shouldn't have to be anxious about going to a doctor in regards to, will they accept me? And
if you're going for something else, it shouldn't come back to your gender identity all the time. If you're trans and you're going in because you're getting a pain in your abdomen, for example, it shouldn't be, oh, well, maybe it's because you had this surgery, or maybe it's because of this and it's all psychosomatic. No, sorry, investigate stuff the same as you would for any other person, because this is what we're talking about. We're talking about a person who happens to have this extra experience in life. We're not talking about a complete freak that has a different set of hormones and different colored blood to you.
It's the same conversation I had so many times with my trans friends, where they've gone to a doctor and they've gone, oh, it's because you're on the hormones, you should come off the hormones. And it's just like...
And that's not even the GP's call.
Yeah.
Unless there's a significant health reason, that's not the GP's call either.
Yeah. And I think it's just, and again, it comes back to what you said at the start of the conversation. The way people are getting pushed isn't the way people like to narratively say people are getting pushed. Like, it's just wholly inaccurate to say that people are being pushed towards trans. Like, just
And also it's giving people a poorer health outcome. If as a trans person you have to go to the GP 3 times before they'll do that scan that'll confirm whether or not that's cancer, compared to once if you're cisgender, how much more likely is it that that's going to be an issue?
Yeah.
There's no nipping things in the bud, catching it before it gets too bad if the GP is going to turn around every time and go, oh, well, it's probably your hormones. Well, actually, maybe just check it out like you would with any other person.
Yeah, I will say though, as as someone, although I identify as non-binary, the GP will see me as a cis female, and there is definitely a difference there as well with the way that cis women are treated at the GPs with regards to physical symptoms and pains and things like that. There's a lot more to blame it on, I suppose. That I've had GPs kind of tell me that I'm, that it's hormones, that it's this, that it's, the female body, and is maybe, there are experiences that I've had with that, and previous to exploring my gender identity and identifying more with being a cis female, and having those experiences at a GP where I have had to go back more and more times with the same thing, and keep going, talking about it and saying this is something that is really impacting me, and continually getting palmed off. And I think that there is an element of, I think there is an element to that is just a lack of resources with the NHS, and crisis and reactive as opposed to prevention.
I don't want to downplay that, but what we're talking about is that minority stress, isn't it?
Oh,
it's
absolutely.
Any time that you don't fit the cis white het male norm,
yeah, absolutely.
Anything outside of that is seen as whatever else, for whichever reason. And again, it comes back to that, and we're talking about the misogyny that was initially built into medicine not being completely gone. We're talking about transphobia, we're talking about homophobia, we're talking about all sorts of bits and pieces. Going to the doctor as someone with a having a bowel problem and being queer, it's like, oh, well, that must be, no, that's not my role, thank you. Don't assume what I do in my bedroom. Even just simple things like that. It's like, no, you can't assume that I have been harmed by putting something where you don't think it belongs. 1, I haven't. 2, why is that any of your business unless I'm coming in and saying I did this thing and that hurt it?
Yes, yeah.
Any way that you are in any way a minority, you're going to have those moments. And the more minoritized you are and the more voiceless people see you as, whether they mean to or not, you can have a really well-meaning GP who still messes up on this. That's when you're going to have that situation where you're not seen as good or good enough. You're not seen as reporting your symptoms correctly or well enough for it to be diagnosed. You're not going to be treated as seriously.
Yeah, and I think, yes, it's all that everything comes down to this just a lack of education, first of all. So many things, because so many people can get into such a position of power without ever having any kind of education on what is a really necessary thing to get education on now. Like it always has been, but as more people identify in this way, the more necessary it's going to be. And it comes down to everything. Like everything should have an element. I come from a journalistic background. The fact that there's no, and now it's getting introduced, but the fact that there was no actual curriculum for, knowing how to report in an equality and diversity conscious way is a big reason why we, a lot of the people we talked about before, but then, and a lot of them are just not interested in either way. But there's also some people that just make horrible mistakes that they need that if we just teach people at an earlier age, whether it's your doctor, you're a journalist, you're whatever, these are things you need to be aware of, and you shouldn't be getting to the peak of your industry without being aware of these things and being conscious of these things. But kind of as Matt, do you want to go quickly?
Yeah, I was going to say, can we look also a little bit at the flip side of that, the amount of pressure that we're putting on people to get the language right, and the fact that it's okay sometimes to ask questions. One of the biggest questions that I get is around pronouns. Well, I don't know their pronoun. How would I know someone's? Just ask.
Yeah.
If you've accidentally asked a cis person their pronouns because you think they might be trans, boo-hoo.
Yeah.
at the end of the day, you're still going to know what to use in a way that you wouldn't otherwise. Hi, what are your pronouns? Or hi, here's my name and pronouns. And then give them a space to say their name and pronouns. Or just say, can I just check what your pronouns are?
We recently did a big survey through Positive Minds because we recognised that in Portsmouth especially, there's no adult support for people from the community at all. There's nothing. And one of the things that came up from there was use of pronouns, but there was some quite vitriolic, do not ever get my pronouns wrong, even by accident. And you're like, well, sometimes it happens, apologise and move on and accept that sometimes people make mistakes and it's not done maliciously or intentionally. It's just an error, and we're all human and we all make them occasionally. So
Absolutely.
And it spoke like how you say it's apologize, correct yourself, move on.
Absolutely.
Don't explain why you said it wrong. Don't say, oh, this is just...
As soon as you're saying extra, what you're saying is, I see you as other and weird and different, and or I have issues here.
Yeah.
If it's because you see them as differently, keep it to yourself. If it's about your own issues, keep it to yourself. Either way, take that away, take that elsewhere where you're not in front of that person that you've potentially offended, and unpack it there.
Yeah.
Whether that's some kind of therapy situation, some kind of, I'm going to talk to my boss, I'm going to take this to a supervision space, I'm going to take this to my check-in, my one-to-one at work, or to a couple of friends who I know will get why I'm having trouble with this. Take your stuff away from that other person. There's no need to put it on them. You say the word sorry, you say the correct name or pronoun, and you carry on with the conversation as though nothing happened unless that other person wants to speak. Because the more that you make a fuss of it, the more you're making it A, about yourself, and B, you're making it harder for the other person.
You feel there's a built-in guilt already within a lot of LGBTQ people in terms of correcting people, in terms of saying these things. So by you saying it's because I'm this age, it's because I'm used to this, it's because of this. And it makes me personally, especially as someone, again, I use they, them, or he, him. People then go, what am I meant to use? I'm like, well, both. That's kind of the point. Like, just,
ideally, mix it up a bit.
Yeah, mix it up.
Or ask if people have a particular preference, because some people will put down they and he, or she and they, or whatever, and what they're actually saying is, I prefer people to use they, them, but I'm also comfortable enough with this. Yeah. So actually, if you're not sure, ask someone, do you have a preference of which one I use, or do you prefer a mix of both? Because it might be that what you're saying is, I understand that it's hard for some people, and I'm willing personally for myself, not across the board for everyone, for myself to say, actually, I'm comfortable for you to just use he, him pronouns with me because I see you struggling. Yeah. But actually, I prefer a mix, or I prefer they, them pronouns. But that's down to the individual. You cannot put that across the board. And as much as one person that might say it, it doesn't mean that you get to say to the next person who has, for example, she, they, that you get to say to that person, oh, well, my friend so-and-so said that it's okay for me to do this. No, it's okay for you to do that with your friend so-and-so. It's not okay for you to then do that with this particular person in front of you right now.
And it all comes down, every single thing pretty much that we've spoken about comes down to just ask people what they prefer and go with that. It's really
ask the question, because that's the respectful way of doing it.
Yeah. And it's the same as anything. You ask in therapy sessions, like literally I had a mental health assessment yesterday. The person asked on the phone and said, so yeah, your name's Sam, like, is Sam okay? And I said yes. That's normal practice. Asking people for what name they prefer or what their preferred name is best practice for anything. Pronouns should be a part of that as well. And it's just, it's not hard. It's again, like, people can find it so hard when, someone in their family is transitioning and they're like, oh, I've called you this my whole life, I'll just keep calling you that. I was like, no, because if my name's not Samuel, but if my name was Samuel and I went, no, actually, no, I prefer Sam, can you just call me Sam? No one would really think it twice about it.
No.
But because it's, it's shortening someone's name or whatever. But for some reason, when it's a trans person changing a name or you going by a different name, people just don't want to do it. I think it's what it comes down to a lot of the time.
And it absolutely comes back to making it about themselves again. I'm finding it hard. I've called you this all my life, but I'm too old to change my ways. Actually, what you're saying is, I don't want to respect you enough to try. I'm trying to meet you part way. Sometimes you're going to get things wrong. Fine. We all make mistakes, especially if you've known someone for a long, long time. But the important thing is, if you are trying and you are really actually genuinely trying, not just saying you're trying, getting it right the one time they've corrected you and then going back to whatever it was you were using before, whether that's name, pronoun, whatever. If you are genuinely trying to get it right and occasionally getting it wrong, most people will forgive that because they know you're trying. It's about respecting that other person enough to put the effort in. You would put the effort in to be careful about talking about triggering subjects if you knew that someone had been assaulted, for example. You would put the effort in about remembering someone's name in the first place if you've only just met them. You would not put the effort in about what exactly? If you care about this person, where do you not put the effort in? Why do you not put the effort in? Let's look at normalizing respect and dignity.
Yeah.
It all comes back to courtesy and kindness, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're not asked, like, and that's the thing. I think people have this expectation of like, oh, they're just asking for too much. It's like, we're asking for the same thing that every other single person asks for.
Absolutely.
And a bit of courtesy and kindness. I shared that. That's it. It's not. We're not asking for extra. We're asking for the same that you treat everyone else. And that's as simple as that.
And if someone does say that, ask the question back at them. Okay, what extra are they asking?
Yeah.
What are they asking that's too much? Oh, but don't you do that for this person, that person, and the other person? Yeah. Sorry, I'm aware that you're trying to say that you're aware of time.
Okay, I'm very conscious of time, and I like, if I wasn't keeping an eye on time, I'd do this for about 3 or 4 more hours. But I think it's already a long podcast, but we'll definitely come back and revisit this conversation because, as I said at the top, this is a kind of first base for if you want to learn a little bit more and educate yourself a little bit more about the issues that LGBTQ people say. So yeah, I don't even say it right all the time. LGBTQ. Wow.
Just call us the alphabet soups. Alphabetty spaghettis.
Yeah, we'll just say plus. So yeah. So basically, this is a touch point, and at Solent Mind, we are going to do a lot more work in terms of this going further in. With now, obviously, and beyond that, if you want a more advanced understanding, go across to Beyond Reflections, because they've got so much good stuff going on. Where can people find you, Max? Where can people find Beyond Reflections?
This is not my area of the business. So we are on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Nearly forgot Facebook. That was not great. So you can find us mostly either by searching our name or we're at Beyond Reflect UK. We're currently in the process of putting up a new website, so we're kind of in between websites at the minute. But if you follow us on our social media, you'll find that you get plenty of content there, including all of our blogs and things that go up. We do support for people directly, and we also provide training for businesses and individuals. So give us a shout if you need any of that as well.
Yeah. And me and Phil also alluded to a little bit about the podcast, there is a new service coming to Positive Minds in Portsmouth, an LGBT support group. I believe the application is still up for the facilitator as well.
It is, yes. We're looking for volunteer facilitators to come in and do a couple of hours a week to help run the group, which I'm going to be involved in as well. We're very keen to get it started.
Yeah, and it's been something that I know I've been speaking to the people Positive Minds for a while and been working with them since pretty much since I started at Solent Mind last June. I've been kind of talking to people Positive Minds about this, and it's something that we're really excited to get off the ground. And I also know that a number of other services within Solent Mind have also expressed interest in setting up stuff similar. So please do keep an eye on our socials in terms of stuff that could be events up similar, and obviously when Positive Minds service is officially launched. And there'll also be a load of other support in the bio of this video. And again, just like I said at the top of the show, if you are struggling with anything we spoke about, Max, go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't plug that. We're also looking for volunteers. So if you're looking to do any kind of volunteering, even if that's just helping us drive equipment to and from Pride and things like that, please do also give us a shout there.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, of course, Pride events coming up. This actually won't come out until after Portsmouth Pride, so I can't plug that. But I hope, Phil, you had a good day yesterday.
It was fantastic.
But we are also going to be at Southampton Pride officially, as well as a couple of other local prides that potentially we're still looking at getting to, but I won't say officially until we're officially there. But definitely swing by our stalls at Southampton Pride. And yeah, come take a photo with our Instagram frame. It's really fancy, and I've put a lot of work into it, so please do. So yeah, as I said at the top of the show, if you are struggling with anything we've spoken about at all, first of all, reach out to all the LGBTQ specific charities, whether it's Beyond Reflections or anywhere else we've got in the bio in the description. But if you're talking about more generalised stuff, we've got the Harbour in Portsmouth, Havant and East Hampshire, Fareham and Gosport, and that's open 4:30 to 11 p.m. every single evening. The Lighthouse in Southampton, same times, and that is for anyone with an SO postcode. Or if you're in the rest of Hampshire and the Isle of Wight, you can reach out to our support line. That is open between 9 a.m. and 7 p.m. every day, apart from bank holidays where it's 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. And they will be able to refer you to any services in your area, whatever they may be, that have knowledge, and we'll be able to give you brief tips and wellbeing advice as well. Thank you very much to everyone who has guested on the show. It's been really lovely having you. And thank you to everyone who's listening. And we'll see you next month for the next podcast.
If you have been affected by any problems discussed in today's episode, please reach out to our services. If you're in Portsmouth, Fareham, Gosport, Havant or East Hampshire, you can contact the Harbour, open 4:30 p.m. to 11 p.m. every single evening. Just text or call 0741 364 911. If you're in the Southampton area, contact the Lighthouse, open 4:30 p.m. to 11 p.m. every evening. Text Lighthouse and your postcode to 074 5127 6010. And if you aren't in either of those areas, please contact the Solent Mind support line. Give them a call on 023 8017 9049 or contact the web chat on our website. They are open 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. on weekends and bank holidays, and 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. any other day. And they'll be able to let you know any services available in your area.